All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving our praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who are letters true from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And today is Monday, October 6, 2025, Missile Monday, and I have this article from Reuters, and it says, Trump says Putin's offer on nuclear arms control sounds like a good idea. So I'm just going to go into this article and bring out a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point. And it says, U.S. President Donald Trump on Sunday said Russian President Vladimir Putin's offer to voluntarily maintain limits on deployed strategic nuclear weapons sounds like a good idea. Putin last month offered to voluntarily maintain limits, capping the size of the two biggest capping the size of the world's two biggest nuclear arsenals set out in the 2010 New START Accord, which expires in February if the U.S. does the same. And they are right on that aspect, concerning, the current nuclear armed nations. Russia and America both possess the most nuclear missiles or warheads in particular. And in between the two, Russia has more than America. Continuing on, this is Trump. Says, sounds like a good idea to me, Trump told Reuters as he departed the White House when asked about Putin's offer. Russia's UN ambassador Vasily Nebenzia last week had said Moscow was still waiting for Trump to respond to Putin's offer to voluntarily maintain the limits on deployed strategic nuclear weapons once a key arms control treaty expires. Any agreement on continuing to limit nuclear arms would stand in contrast to rising tensions between the United States and Russia since Trump and Putin met in Alaska in mid-August, given reported incursions of Russian drones into NATO airspace. Man. Page froze up. All right. So it says, speaking in a video clip released on Sunday, Putin warned that a decision by the United States to supply long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine's forced strikes deep into Russia would destroy Moscow's relationship with Washington. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance said last month that Washington was considering a Ukrainian request to obtain missiles that could strike deep into Russia, including Moscow. Though it is unclear if a final decision has been made, Trump, who has expressed disappointment in Putin for not moving to end the war in Ukraine, was not asked directly on Sunday about the prospect of supplying Tomahawks to Ukraine. This will lead to the destruction of our relationships, or at least the positive trends that have emerged in these relations, Putin said in a video clip released on Sunday by Russian state television reporter Pavel Sarubin. One U.S. official and three other sources told Reuters that the Trump administration's desire to send long-range Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine may not be viable because current inventories are committed to the U.S. Navy and other uses. And it says Trump is touring a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier, the George H.W. Bush, off the coast of Virginia on Sunday, and will give a speech on a second carrier, the Harry S. Truman, later. Tomahawk cruise missiles have a range of 2,500 kilometers, 1,550 miles. If Ukraine got the missiles, the Kremlin and all of Europe, European Russia would be within target. And yeah, man, that would honestly be within the United States' best interest to try to prolong, you know, this treaty, or this, pretty much that offer. Because again, even though the New Start Act, I think that's the one, the particular act that was signed expires, in February of 2026, but Russia, or Putin is going to, keep a vow to, limit arms, you know, which again is good, for the U.S. because again, it's prolonging, World War III, which, again, there's nothing that's going to stop this war from happening. But as far as, number 47, that's good for him, because right now, again, that's somewhat buying him time, even though we know that this war isn't going to happen overnight, it's still going to be a buildup. But again, we'll just have to wait and see exactly what transpires to cause Russia and America to be directly at war, as we know or should know that, the yarmulke wearers, are going to do something that is going to cause these two nations to, be at war with each other, because they're going to step in on behalf of their allies because, America supports, the white flag with the hexagram on it, and Russia is a guard to those different Arab, countries over there, as well as other countries, the Persians, which are, the Elamites, and certain of these African, so-called African, nations as well, so again, yeah, that's good for him, to pretty much, do this, because again, instead of, just blatantly, well, no, we're not gonna, because again, Putin doesn't have to do that, because it says he's voluntarily doing this, even after, that particular act or deal, expires, he's still going to limit arms control, because again, that's what the U.S. is trying to do. They're trying to limit arms control. They really want to be the only nation that, is creating nuclear weapons, but in reality, is too late. These other nations already have them, but they want to limit them. Just last week, North Korea, they're developing another, ICBM that they said is capable of striking anywhere in the U.S. So these different nations, they aren't effing around, man. The time is coming where all of these different nations are eventually going to come up against Babylon the Great, So I'm not going to make this one too long. I'm just going to grab, a couple of scriptures, hit the main points. So I'm going to start with the book of Malachi, chapter 4, and verse 1. And it says, "For behold, the day cometh that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch." And right, that's the day that's coming, World War III, aka the day of the Lord, because once this war happens, that's going to be the end of this place, America is going to go down and never to be risen up again. It's going to be left as a memorial, just like Sodom and Gomorrah was left as a memorial. I forget which country over there in the east, ancient Sodom and Gomorrah is located, but it's still, desolate, over there. There's still traces of sulfur over there from that destruction that took place, But the destruction of America, aka Babylon the Great, is going to trump that, you know. Because again, man, like, yeah, we'll remember Sodom and Gomorrah, but again, the destruction of Babylon is going to be way greater, man. It's going to be talked about, you know, for forever, you know. How the Lord, you know, Lord willing, we be of the elect, delivered us out of this place, you know. Because again, Babylon's judgment is great, man. You know, just like it says, her sins reacheth unto heaven. Which, real quick, I'll actually grab that. And, you know, I think that's not, it may be Jeremiah I'm thinking of. Let's lock here, let me see. Yeah, Jeremiah chapter 51. And I'm going to start at verse 7. And it says, Slakia, Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. How for her? Take balm for her pain, if so she may be healed. And right, these different nations have drunken of the wine of Babylon, meaning these different philosophies, doctrines, you know, the overall lifestyle of America. You know, this is why you have places like Japan, you know, that pretty much, you know, I'll say, you know, Tokyo, Japan in particular, you know, is pretty much mirrored after America, in particular New York City. You know, Tokyo, Japan looks just like New York City, except it's just cleaner. You know, you also have these different nations, you know, that that are wearing suits, you know, these 3-piece suits, man. You know, these different nations that come to America, you know, their women, you know, become harlots, you know, or their sons become sodomites. Again, this is, you know, these different nations drinking of the wine of Babylon, man, you know. And again, America is, you know, falling. This place will be destroyed, man, because just like it says, there is no healing this place, right? Verse 9, it says, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, let us go, every one into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. And right, man, America's sins is just piling, you know, sin upon sin, iniquity, you know. This is why the destruction of this place is going to be, the destruction of this place is going to be so great, you know, because the Lord is allowing Esau, Edom, you know, the whole nation, in particular, you know, the elites, you know, to stack up, you know, their iniquities, man, all the evil that they're doing, you know. So once our Lord Yahweh Shah comes back, you know, the destruction of this place is going to be great, you know. And I'm going to jump to the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, in verse 16. And it says, behold, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bringeth forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy. And right, man, these modern day scientists and physicists will be your modern day blacksmiths, you know, because what does a blacksmith do? You know, they create weapons of war. And that's exactly what these scientists are doing. They're creating weapons of war, and not just any weapons of war, weapons of mass destruction, you know, because these nuclear weapons that are on the earth today have the capability of literally destroying the planet Earth, you know. But as it says in the scriptures, the earth abideth forever, you know, so the entire earth won't be destroyed, but America, aka Babylon the Great, will be completely destroyed, you know, by fire, and the land of Israel will be destroyed, but it will be built back up, you know, because Jerusalem is going to be made beautiful again. It's going to be the headquarters of the world, man. Because remember, our land has to be cleansed because of all the wickedness that Amalek is over there doing. And on top of that, they're the ones over there, man. You know, Amalek and those Ishmaelites, you know, because they're over there in our land. You know, just like it says in Zechariah 9:6, you know, a bastard shall dwell in Ashdod, you know, because again, both of those nations, primarily Amalek, are over there fighting over that land, but it's neither one of theirs, It's the children of Israel's. You so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, that's our land, but we will get our land back in due time. And, the instrument for his work, the ways to destroy, being the nuclear missiles themselves, in particular the warheads, because that's the part of the missile that is going to do the damage, So again, Trump can, again, which is good for him, So it's best to, try to keep the peace for as long as possible before, it goes down, because once World War III officially is official, because it's already started, but it won't be official until Russia and America are directly at war with each other, but until then, it's good for Trump to keep peace with Russia, because again, Putin is ready to take this place down. Kim Jong-un is ready to take this place down. These different nations, they're ready to come up against Babylon, So I'm going to get the book of Isaiah chapter 9 verse 5, and it says, "For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood, but this shall be with burning and fuel of fire." And right, man, this coming Third World War isn't going to be a traditional war like you had, ancient warfare, that was fought with hand-to-hand combat, men having, swords, spears, shields, bow and arrows, these different weapons of war, charging each other on the battlefield. You're hearing men being stabbed, you're hearing swords hit other swords, swords hit shields, that confused noise, But again, this says that this should be with burning and fuel of fire, because this war is primarily going to be fought with these thermonuclear missiles, And I always have to make mention that you will have ground troops that are going to be going to war with each other, but this war is primarily going to be fought with these nuclear missiles, So I'm going to grab a couple more and that'll be it. I'm going to grab the book of Joel chapter 3 and verse 9, and it says, "Proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, beat your plowshares into swords, and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I'm strong." And right, man, this is what these different nations are doing. They're gearing up for war, ultimately to come up against Babylon. This is what they're doing, So Trump can, again, try to keep the peace for as long as possible, but overall, it's not going to last long, So that's good news for you Americans, but overall, this place is still going to go down. It doesn't matter what he does, because the yarmulke wearers, they're going to do something that is going to make Russia angry, and eventually they're going to have to step in on their behalf of their allies, just like Russia is going to have to step in on behalf of, these Israelis, So coming back to Isaiah, we're going to get chapter 13 and verse 4, and it says, "The noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together. The Lord of hosts mustereth the host of the battle. They come from a far country, from the end of heaven, even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land." And right, man, once that day comes and these nukes are launched, that's it. It's game over at that point, because you're going to hear these missiles before you even see them. That's that great noise that it's talking about, that tumultuous noise, because again, there's going to be thousands upon thousands of these nuclear missiles that are going to be launched, and you're going to hear them before you even see them. And some, you might even see them, because a lot of these missiles are going to be launched into space and they're going to return to the Earth's atmosphere, to hit their specific target, which is here in America. It doesn't matter where. All of these missiles have a particular target, a specific state, a specific city. Just like you have nukes that are aimed at New York City, Texas, California, these different places, but overall, all of these nukes are going to destroy this place, you know. And just like it says, they come from a far country, so these nukes are going to be shot from one end of the earth and land in the other. So they're going to be shot from the east and land in the west, you know, because all of these nations are going to come up against this place, you know. It's just a matter of time. So I'm going to end it with this. This is the book of Revelation, chapter 9 and verse 15. It says, "And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour and a day and a month and a year for to slay the third part of men." And just like it speaks of in Revelation, the 7th chapter, you know, these are four literal angels holding back the four winds, which the four winds represent, you know, the destruction, you know. And here in the 9th chapter in Revelation, it says in this verse that the four angels were loosed because there is a set time when the Lord is going to, you know, unleash these four angels to allow this destruction to take place, because there is a particular hour, day, month, and year when this war is going to take place, you know. There is a set time, and only the Heavenly Father knows when He's going to send our Lord Yahweh Shai back to finish America off, you know, because on a small scale, Russia is going to be that main place or that main force that is going to destroy America. But as we know, or should know, that on a much grander scale, our Lord Yahweh Shai, along with the angels, are going to destroy America, you know. And finishing off, and it says, "For to slay the third part of men," because you have three classes of men on the earth. You have the sons of God, which are, you know, today, which are the biblical Israelites, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. The sons of God, you know, you have the sons of men, which are the different heathen nations. And you have the sons of the wicked, which is the nation of Edom, you so-called white people. You're the third part of men. And that's who this destruction is for. It's for you, the nation of Edom. You know, you're the third part of men, and this coming destruction is specifically for you. And you will have 2/3 of the nation of Israel that is going to get caught up in its destruction. And, you know, you heathens that are over here, as I say as always, you know, you're just collateral damage. You know, you're just here to make your little money and be destroyed. That's it. So live it up now while you can. So Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give all praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakodash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till the next time I say, Shalom.